What is good, YouTube? And today we're going to be talking about what shells you guys should be using on your supports, mostly for PvE content. Now, as you guys know, there are 4 main shell bosses with NicoNana, Sharon, Shadowflame, Hoyan, and Rengokutsu, and there's a ton of shells that you can actually use on your supports, and you might get overwhelmed with how many they are and not really know where to use them in. So I'm going to be telling you in this video where you guys should be using these shells and on what characters, and in what situations you may want to run even more than one of them on your team. So there's basically 3 support shells you'll see here: Artisan, Gigabyte, and Alicorn. Artisan is going to be by far one of the best PvE support shells in the game, especially when you're progressing through content for the first time. If you're struggling with the push into Hell 3, Hell 4, or Inferno content, then this shell is going to be one of the best shells in the game. You can pretty much put this on any fast character, and if you need another Artisan shell because it gives you extra shielding, you can even put it on another slow character so that they don't actually overlap. So the way this shell works is before the owner takes action, they get a defense buff, which is great, but the biggest thing is that you get a shield for yourself equal to your defense and also to the ally with the lowest health percentage. So most of the time, since your DPS is going to be the lowest, you will be shielding them for a very large amount. The reason why if you're running 2 or more, you want them on a fast unit and a slow unit kind of spread out is because this shield will not actually stack, as you can see. So this shell can be very good in pretty much all 3 of the thresholds. If you're struggling in Terramaton especially, it's very good there because there's a lot of burst damage and you can't really have anyone die in that fight or else you just kind of lose. It's also going to be very good in pretty much all of the shell bosses as well. This shell is going to be the most universal PvE shell in the game for supports, and if you're looking for mitigation, it is very good to run on just any fast character and slow character on your team. Now in terms of Gigabyte, this is mostly going to be a PvP shell. I wouldn't really recommend running this in PvE content for the most part because there's better options. However, you can use this on any character that wants to cycle fast. For example, if you're trying to get into Doki Doki, and since NicoNana is one of the earliest accessible shell farms, you could put it on something like Kazuya the Reverie to cycle quicker into her S3 to help mitigate the damage that your team takes by CCing and putting down attack. It's also, like I said, good in PvP. For the most part, you're going to be doing this shell on basically your PvP characters, so you don't really have to worry about it too much in PvE, but having one built on Swift Rush Time Weave is going to be very good for your PvE progression. Alicorn is 100% going to be a PvP shell. You can pretty much ignore this for the early game. There's some niche areas in like Anasync Echoes where it's good, but for the most part, it is a shell that you can end up skipping. Now moving into Sharon. So there's basically going to be 3 support shells here. You have Supernova, you have Darkmoon, and Halloween. Supernova is only really ever going to be good on PvE for things like Ling Luo and also Fushu. So if you're doing Aurora, this is pretty much required on Ling Luo unless you have like dupes of her. So because of that, you just want to slap this on her. It's a very good shell for Ling Luo in just any content that has like 5 people in it on your team. Outside of that, you're not going to really use it too much. You can also use it on Fushu, but I don't really recommend it. So this is kind of like a healer shell, but for the most part, it's not going to be used too much in PvE content except for Ling Luo in Aurora. Now, Darkmoon is kind of a weird shell, so basically the way it works is it'll target and basically extend the duration of debuffs that the boss or whatever it hits gets on that turn. So you can also use this on something that can debuff, right? So you can use this on something like a Kloss. So Kloss is very good with it because if you have Kloss on it, you can actually S3 and it'll inflict a 3-turn defense down and speed down, which is very, very good. The only downside is it doesn't actually extend the duration of the hack-in, and it doesn't extend CCs. So if you can't actually use it on something like a Casio and have like a 2-turn sleep on this, or even a 3-turn sleep on your S1, because that would be just insane, right? So because of that, this shell is going to be mostly used on things like Kloss, anything that uses defense down, even Dyna as well. But for the most part, I wouldn't really use this because there's going to be a better option in Rengokutsu that you can use. Now for Halloween, this is going to basically work as kind of like Time Weave where you're reducing skill cooldowns. The only thing is this is a random skill cooldown, so it's not going to be that great. It's mostly going to be used on characters that have a passive on their S2. So something on Kloss, it's not that great because you can actually reduce the cooldown of your S2, which is fine. But your big skill that you really want to reduce the CD on is going to be your S3. So because of this, we can actually manipulate it so that it only reduces the cooldown of one skill. And that's by using something that has a passive in their S2. For example, Viper. It's pretty decent on Viper if you don't need the Artisan shielding because of the fact that it can actually apply this cooldown reduction on your S3 only pretty consistently. It's also going to be good on something like a Kazuya the Reverie. I know I'm using her a lot as an example, but it's because she has a passive as well in her S3. If you are using Mizuki Makoto for some reason in PvE content outside of Teramaton, you can use it on her. It's basically anything with a passive on their S2 is going to be the best user for this shell. Golden Lion, even though it looks like a support shell because it has effect accuracy, it has final damage. You're going to mostly use this on damage dealers, and it's honestly mostly a PvP shell. So we're going to skip over that for this video. But let's actually go into Shadow Flame Hoyan. So Shadow Flame Hoyan has one support shell, and that's going to be Jackal Guard. The other one, which you can kind of see as support, is Amber, but this is also going to be for PvP. It's kind of like a cheat death. You can use this on like Fushu for Aurora, or just like any support that is fighting a boss that counters their affinity. For example, you know, any green support in Aurora, but it's pretty niche. For the most part, we're going to talk about Jackal Guard today, and Jackal Guard is an amazing shell. So this shell pretty much gives you a full speed buff, like uptime on your character, on one character that has it. It also does a decent amount of damage. This damage is insane in PvP, by the way, and it also turn meter pushes you. So this is basically just a better Gigabyte in PvE content because you're cycling 30%, 25% every 3 turns, but the speed buff is going to be way more efficient, especially if you're fast enough to lap the minions or the boss you're fighting, because you need enemies to take turns to activate Gigabyte. So this shell is going to be very good on a lot of supports, anything that likes to cycle very quickly. For example, like Sonya, it's pretty good on her. You can also use it on Ling Luo if you actually don't need a lot of burst healing but need more purifies from your Whale Prayer, from your S1. And you can use it on pretty much anything that doesn't have a built-in speed buff. However, you have to keep in mind that if you do have a speed buff on your team, the speed buff doesn't stack, it'll just refresh it. So you do lose out on the value if you have a speed buff. So for that reason, if you already have a speed buffer, you might want to run a different shell on that character, unless you need the extra damage for a one-shot, or if you just have no other options. But if you're using this on a healer, I think the most common user is going to be Green Sonya. If you have a speed buff already because you're using Lily or Nell in your Rengokutsu team, you can drop this and run a healing shell. Probably not Supernova, but probably the one that we're going to talk about now in Rengokutsu. So there's 2 support shells here. We have Fortissimo and Codex. Count is for DPS, and Lighthouse is going to be for PvP only. So Fortissimo is an amazing shell. So basically it saves your healing. It doesn't like steal your healing, but it will basically count the healing that you do, and even the excess healing, which will actually store more. And if the holder is about to take action or take their turn, if there's anyone on your team below a certain amount of health, it just heals them. And this is very good because in PvE content, you're overhealing a lot. So this will basically full heal a lot of squishy characters and even some tanky characters, to be honest. So this is going to be very good on characters that can consistently heal every turn. Ling Luo is actually pretty good on it, mostly for 4-man content when you need the burst healing. And Sonya is like the best user by far with like Fushu as well because she is constantly overhealing with her Moonlit Veil. For the most part, this shell gets more value when there's less characters on your team, because that way the stored healing doesn't split as much and the heal is a lot higher. So I definitely recommend this on pretty much every healer used on Rengokutsu if you don't have a speed buffer, if you do have a speed buffer. If you don't have a speed buffer, Jackal Guard is also a good option. Just keep in mind Fortissimo is an amazing shell that will basically save you in a lot of situations, because this will basically full heal whoever is below 60% when it activates every 2 turns, which is insane. Last but not least, we have Codex. So this shell is going to be mostly for one-shot comps. You can see that it's a very long cooldown, so you'll only get 1 usage out of it. But basically, it makes it so that the next skill you use, you have reduced CD, and basically it just resets the CD, which sounds insanely broken because it really is. So let's actually look at some like one-shot teams for some shell bosses. So like this is Rengokutsu, not Rengokutsu, this is Shadow Flame Hoyan. And you can see that a lot of characters will be using either Codex for the extra cooldown if you really want that S3, or some characters might use Darkmoon if you just want to extend debuffs. But for the ones that have like a very strong CC effect, especially on their S3 or especially in dot comp, you're going to want to run mostly Codex, because it's just going to be a very safe way to make sure that you can apply your debuffs and then apply it again. So you're going to see a lot of dot teams and like, you know, characters like that will be using Codex, and it's also insanely strong for PvP. Like if you think about it, if you're able to S3 twice in a row, it just sounds broken, right? And it really is. It's going to be a very, very important shell to farm, and that's why a lot of people are asking for Rengokutsu nerfs, because it's a very hard boss and they want to farm some Codexes. But, you know, the best part about Codex is there's a lot of matrix spreads that work. It's not just fast characters. You can run it on Bloodbath with Bulwark, which is very popular as well. And this shell is going to be one of the best shells for one-shot bosses for PvE, so speed clearing, which is still very important in this game, so you don't waste all your time farming. And also for PvP. So, yeah, it's a great double-dipping shell. But yeah, that's pretty much it for all the support shells in the game. I think I covered it pretty extensively. If you guys have any questions, you can ask down below in the comment section, and I'll be happy to answer. And I will see you guys next video.